I've often talked about a go bag. There's something that I usually exclude from my go bag. There's a reason for that. Because of the term mentally ill, and also because of the risks of being targeted when you're homeless. Um, this one right here, this is from October 19th of 2018. So the day after my birthday in 2018. I'm going to try to pull it up on this computer. Let's see. We'll go to YouTube. All right. And then we will go to Urban Get Home Bag. This guy posted this in 2018. There's a few that are even newer than that. We'll see if I can find the same one, though. It looks like there's quite a few of them here. Some of these folks, they call it a get home bag. That's for if you happen to be out and about when it all hits the fan, like say a riot breaks out or something like that, and you do need to legit get home, get to your loved ones, and it's all right. What's the name of this guy's channel? Survival Dispatch. All right, add that in there. There it is. It looks like he remade one. It's called the $100 Get Home. Nice. Matter of fact, it looks to me as if there are quite a few. It's 72-hour kit. Wow, these guys really, really get into it. A lot of you guys, when you think preppers, you think basically those wingnuts that you see on TV that like all they do is mess around with guns and canned goods, and that's pretty much it. Um, I'm sharing this video on Facebook real quick before I put it up in this video. Part of the reason, but you notice that even the ones that are really, really into firearms, you look at what's in their get home kit, and it's most of them don't even have a gun in it. Um, if they want to get home, you know, most of these guys do carry a pistol, but they carry that on their person, so it doesn't go into their emergency kit. A lot of these guys have like concealed carry license. I got one of them eye boogers and it won't come out. But the reason that I'm trying to get people to pay attention to this is because, like, these guys are always showing off the newest, latest, and coolest gear, right? Oh god, I'm gonna have to get that out of there somehow, and my friggin' fingers are nasty. What the hell am I thinking? Sticking my fingers in my eyeball. Oh great, my sleeve isn't any better. I wiped my boogers on that. Oh god, being a nasty gutter punk is fucking gross sometimes. Get more boogers in my eye than I got out. Alright, when you guys get done retching, we'll get back to the video. A lot of the stuff that you guys take for granted. If you have a really messed up situation later on down the road and you have no clue what you're doing, it's really going to suck. There's some stuff that it would be really, really good to learn right now, and to stock up on the equipment to do so. Sutures, that's pretty important. If you end up, let's say you're camping, things aren't going well, or let's say the hospitals are having a explosion of people with COVID in them, and they just ain't got no room. You see people around the block for miles and miles. Yeah, you might want to possibly learn how to do that yourself. It is highly not recommended, but you know what? If it's that or you're dying, it's better off that you're at least trying to do something about it. Now, when you have a little bit of education in what you're doing, you can make more informed decisions. When you're making decisions based on what you heard, um, well, I heard a lot of stuff too, and it turned out most of it's bullshit. This guy's go bag. I'm only gonna play part of the video, but the thing that homeless people learn from experience that a lot of y'all don't learn is that you need to manage your space. You have to carry that with you everywhere. You're not necessarily going to have the luxury of going home and changing clothes or going down and using the locker at wherever your gym is. You're not necessarily going to have that luxury. Now, if you got a vehicle, that's great. If there's a situation where you're having problems getting fuel, well, you might want to learn about alternate fuels. That takes a little bit more work, though. But you take a look at what's in these kits. I mean, you're talking about stuff for emergency lighting, emergency signaling. You know, it's not meant for harming anyone. You've got ropes and lanyards and all sorts of stuff for like mirrors and stuff for if you need to signal an airplane going overhead. Although they say not to do that now, that could cause a crash. Oh God, that was stupid of me. Oh, wrong mouse.
To carry one, just the basics, your wallet. So this complements your EDC. Now, something that's really important is a belt. I really like the bull leather belts from
really
Deltec Force.
Up a little bit.
Wants to start something, just back off, let it go. Try to get out of the situation as much as possible. And holding to the gray man appearance and philosophy, just blend in with your surroundings. But when you are out and about, dress the occasion. I mean, just dress down, nothing to really bring attention to yourself. And of course, another big part is having a plan. Planning where you're headed. What are you going to do? Having alternate plans when you get to that location where you see that your plan's not going to make it. Now, there's definitely a lot of bag choices. I like the backpack. It's real easy. It looks, people wear backpacks all the time, so you really don't stand out.
The very first thing you should plan for is for nothing to go as planned. I did not plan on poking myself in the eyeball like an idiot. But it happened. And guess what? Both of my eyes are tearing up as a result of it. Am I permanently injured? No. Those of you who are laughing your asses off, that's all right. I'm laughing my ass off too. This guy at the beginning of his video is talking about statistics, which a lot of the videos do. And those statistics are, meant to inform the public so that they can make an informed decision. a lot of people have a specific hate that they learned from one person or another, and they don't necessarily have the ability to see another person's point of view. Like a lot of people who think that alcohol should be legal, they think that it's fine. There's a lot of people who've been beaten by alcoholics their whole life. They're not fine with that. For them to see somebody that they know and love go from being someone they know and love to this monster over something like that is it'll tear you in half, especially if you're a kid. Now, a lot of the situations that we're getting into, this guy, he's a prepper and not like the ones that you see on TV necessarily. Like those guys are almost all guns, and this guy is really into guns, but he's more into the education part of it. Also, a lot of these guys, when they go through and they show you these gun reviews, because they're not allowed to show you a whole lot about firearms anymore. It's against YouTube's rules. So, basically all they can do is gun reviews. They've got these gun companies that are sending them these parts and those parts and all these other parts in between, trying to give them the next trick to your ride friggin' rifle. Like, no, dude, I'm not going to Jesse James if I get a motorcycle. I'm going to get a motorcycle that I'm going to ride every day. you know? I'm not going to go get a friggin' showpiece. And that stuff it's so incredibly pretty. But I mean, what practical purpose does it have? In an urban environment, a lot of people, you know how you guys get. You start talking about what you would do. I'd do this if somebody pulled a gun on me, or I'd do that if somebody pulled a gun on me. But then we got all these stories that we get to hear about people pulling out guns and ending up dead. Like, best way to avoid the punch is don't be there. Thank you, Mr. Miyagi, for that little piece of advice. But there's also a lot of other preppers, like the Montana preppers. A lot of those folks, they establish uh, communication networks within their communities so that if something does happen, whether it be a military strike, which a lot of people are paranoid of, and well, okay, I think it's more likely that we're going to have a natural disaster. You look at how many of these things are actually here on American soil. When's the last time that we had a war on American soil? I mean, we did fight a little bit in Alaska at the Aleutian Islands with the Japanese, and they and the Germans were pretty well right off the coast, thinking whatever the hell they wanted as far as shipping goes. But as far as actual land-based engagements, long-term battlements created and built and constructed and actually used and utilized, like no, we got off pretty easy. Um, a lot of that is because we were also able to prepare. The British, when they got into the war, they were completely unprepared for it. They did not expect it. They knew something was coming, things that had been building for years, and they just wanted to pacify the situation. Well, now we're in a situation where we've got all these people who want to talk about what they would do, what they would do. Oh, if somebody pulled a gun out on me, I'd use this special kung fu maneuver I saw David Carradine pull once in the movies. And I'm like, oh, man, another one of these guys. You must be a neurotypical. Or these guys who go, when somebody pulls a gun out on you, would you rather have one or no? I'm like, at that point, trying to pull it out would just get me shot. You're going to be slower if you have it there. Weapons make you slow. They slow down your reaction time. They slow down your options. a lot of times people with weapons, somebody swings at them, the first thing they do is to start seizing up. Well, then they're gripping whatever's in their hand. You might want to, upon occasion, grab a hold of something or maneuver something out of the way so that you don't get injured. And when you're in a urban situation as a civilian, you don't have military options. You just don't. Even if there's martial law, there are still options militarily that our government can use. There are also still ways of finding out who it is that was taking advantage of martial law to go out and play Hollywood anarchist. What's Hollywood anarchist? Well, that's where you got some wingnut who wants to go out and blow up everything and burn everything and destroy everything. A lot of these preppers that you see on these TV shows, they're the ones that are just the gun nuts. They're a bunch of gun nuts who have a bunch of cans. They got canned goods and guns. Now, the spot out in the middle of nowhere, that's a good idea. It is. A spot where it's yours and you won't get bothered, that's a great idea. But you also have to have the option of being able to go if you have to. Um, there might be a situation where you just have a moment's notice and you got to get out of the house with everything that you can. If you sit down right now and you think of everything in your house that you would need if the house burned, that's that restricted number harassing me again. If your house were to burn down to the ground and you only had one thing that you could grab, if it was burning down because of an electrical fire or whatever, there's nobody trying to hurt you, but you're going to need all of the insurance forms. You're going to need, at least your kids' school records and stuff like that. You're going to need the information for whoever it is that's your insurance agent, and possibly any emergency contacts that you might be able to utilize to get somewhere. If let's say your vehicle was in the garage and now you're without a vehicle as well, things like that. Anything that as you're going out the door, everything else is on fire. This is the one thing that you're hoping is going to be there on your way out. Um, but you have what's called a go bag. A go bag is the same thing as an urban get home bag, which is what this guy's talking about. There's a restricted number calling over and over again. Starmasia type solo is not ideal, but also not avoidable. You're right, it's not avoidable. And a lot of people are worthless to our society. They're not worthless people. They're just worth less to our society. What is everybody supposed to care about? We're supposed to care about the Kardashians. We're supposed to care about Ozzy and Sharon, right? We're supposed to care about the rich and famous. We're supposed to be bombarded all the time with rich and famous, no matter what, rich and famous, rich and famous. And we got all these reality TV shows, and ain't none of them real. None of them. There's nothing real about that stuff. Trouncing off through the friggin' jungle with your bajanglies, friggin' dangling for all nature and whatnot to be biting at your skibulous underwears. Skibulous. Seriously. The king has new clothes, right? That was a story from when I was a kid. The king couldn't find any perfect clothes or whatever. And this dude pretended to sew some invisible clothes and give them to the king, and everybody pretended it was magnificent. But the point is that the king and his pompousness, like, everybody's going along with it because they're scared. One thing with a situation where, like, let's say it's a police officer or, somebody who has a government rank and file type of position. A lot of people have resentment towards those folks and also have so much fear of those type of people that I fear that in a situation where things are falling apart, people aren't going to want to go to the police. They're going to be afraid of the police, and the police are going to be just as afraid of them in that scenario. I mean, when you're a police officer, there's no way that you don't think about that. Like, what happens if, you know, 3 more idiot cops shoot black people this month and we end up with riots nationwide? I mean, we already have it so that, there's a bunch of white people taking part in this stuff. And the other thing is that it's being played off as if it's all right and if it's all about black people. And that is such a messed up narrative. There is so much going on right now. I mean, we've got women who are trying to get heard because they're not being listened to. We've got children who, I grew up in the system. Many of the people who offered to help grew up in the system. We have not been heard. None of us are being heard. They use the same excuses. If you're black, if you're black and homeless, it must be fine. If you're a female and homeless, it must be fine. If you're a white person who's homeless, it must be fine. It doesn't matter what religion you are. If you're homeless, it must be fine. You call them mentally ill, it must be fine. Regardless of color, regardless of religion, and regardless of gender. Each one of these groups wants everybody to stop and pay attention to them. And I'm telling y'all, hey, I'm paying attention to all y'all because you're all saying the same thing. You're all complaining that you have no representation in the courts, in the city council, in Congress, or in the White House, ever. You don't feel represented, and there's a reason for that. You're not. You are not. You're not represented. You are absolutely 100% correct. A lot of the things that I say, they get misinterpreted, as in people thinking that I'm trying to somehow justify the cruel things that are happening. I'm not. I'm saying that it is wrong. But it is just as wrong no matter who you do it to. That's what equality means. If we're to just believe every officer out there is a good person, then we need to extend that to every human being. We need to assume that every human being is a good person until they show us otherwise. A lot of people say you need to train. Sorry. Storm Age, you typed care about being pretty, and I love the Naked King book. Deaf Bread put a sailboat there. I love sailboats. But what's in this guy's go bag? We should probably listen. It's mostly medical supplies, emergency supplies. It's a bunch of a bunch of really cool stuff. Splints, ways to start a fire if you need to, if it's in case of an emergency. Map of the area, wherever it is that you're at. It's probably a good idea to have a map. In the cases of a lot of the stuff that we're looking at now, there's a lot of historians that are really keeping an eye on the situation right now, speaking up a lot. The reason for that is because we've seen these behaviors, these human behaviors, these ideologies, we've seen them thrive before. We've seen them in Europe, especially. We still talk about, even here in the United States, about Napoleon. We don't talk about Napoleon nearly in the evil light that the Europeans do. But at the same time, I mean, we were basically allied with the French at the time. We bought the Louisiana Purchase from the French, who had bought it from the Spanish over the sinking of the El Cazador. That means the Hunter. That was in 1784, I believe. It had 50,000 silver coins. They were supposed to go from Mexico to shore up the economy in Louisiana, and the thing sank 50 miles away from New Orleans. Dude with the boat talking about that. That right there, that changed the entire regime. That changed who was there. We always want to think that, we are beyond that. Each generation wants to tell themselves the same pompous crap as the last. We're better than they are. We're better than our parents. We're better than our grandparents. No, we have more access to screw up. We also have it thrown in our faces a lot more. We also have pretty much a zero forgiveness policy in the United States. It's screwed up. All right, I should probably press play on this.
You can throw these on, you can get to where you're going, you have nothing encumbering you. The big problem with a backpack is if you need anything out of it, you got to bring it around and get to it. And a lot of times you have to sit down, figure it out. And here we have the Entity. This is actually from Xpedition. It was a bag especially for that gray man effect. And then you can use a sling pack. Now, this is the Maxpedition Mongo. It's definitely the largest of the Versa packs. You can go with a messenger bag, a lot of different styles. One of the things about the messenger bag, though, is that if you're going on a long trek, it can get really heavy. I mean, it wears on one side. There is a strap that'll balance it out around your waist.
You see why I put the link there? This guy is not talking about shooting people or going to war trying to get home. He's just worried about getting there safely. Not making big waves, not getting 10,000 people staring at him. Everybody's got their own things that they got to do in a situation like that. I mean, if you got a bunch of Russian Hind helicopters flying in, well, then, yeah, you probably got a reason to be afraid. We got a couple of really big oceans, and it's more than likely going to be ICBMs. That stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. In that particular case, you're probably not going to want to stay put. Nuclear fallout is definitely not a joke. You're probably going to need to find a safe place as soon as possible, which means traveling, which means, again, you need that bag next to your door. This is why I recommend two different bags. If there's an emergency, like an unforeseen emergency, you may need to get the one with all of the medical supplies. You might need to get the one with all of the paperwork because you still have access to a hospital. And that's kind of the way you might want to look at it between which bag that you are going to grab. Is a hospital someplace that I can go? If things are bad enough that the hospital's closed down, yeah, you should probably grab the other bag. That paperwork isn't going to do you any good. You can't go to the hospital anyway. Your insurance forms are fucking shit. Let me see. All right. Mr. Dev said that he likes boats. So here's one of my favorite ships. We can thank the French for this. And hopefully it'll actually fit in the live streaming thing. This is the El Hermione, and I am probably terribly butchering it. But this is the ship that, yes, it did post. This is the ship Marquis de Lafayette came. across from France in. I'm not sure if y'all ever heard of the King's Black Musketeers. A lot of times we like to say, well, it's not fair. We use a lot of this word black to mean, dark as in like darkened soul and things like that. And it's not fair to black folks because there's automatically that association. But there's also the King's Black Musketeers. If you guys know anything, you ever heard of the name D'Artagnan? Athos, Porthos, and Aramis? Why is it that you've got three French King's Guards who all have Latin names? That's the strangest part of that story for me. The Marquis de Lafayette was one of those men. He was one of the King's Black Musketeers. He was one of the Musketeers. That's them. They were actually a regiment. They did actually exist. They also had their own representation in Parliament. Can you imagine royalty having a parliament in France? There's all this stuff that keeps biting us. We keep saying, well, we got all this technology. We're beyond all this. We got all this technology. We don't have to worry about, oh, damn, Y2K. What the hell happened there? We've got all this technology. We learned from Y2K. Everything is completely, oh, damn, 9/11. What the hell happened there? And then we got all these sicknesses and all these illnesses all over the world, and we're having them glued to our friggin' faces. We're having it beamed into our friggin' living room. And I don't mean beamed as in some alien is out in outer space beaming it into our heads. I mean, we got satellites. Those satellites relay our television, they relay our phone signals, they relay our internet signal. We have terrain on the planet. That terrain prevents signals from getting through. So we got to find a way over it. That's where satellites come in, really tall radio towers. But we're also entirely dependent upon what's in place now. Americans like to play down our vulnerabilities while at the same time being so petrified of it, they don't do anything. They don't prepare for it at all. A lot of people, their solution seems to be to go killing people. Well, all that leads to is more killing and more hatred, more killing and more hatred, and more killing. How about work on surviving? Also, this guy right here, he talks about going gray. Wear stuff that, like right here, he's wearing a shirt with an AR-15 across the front of it. That's not something that he's necessarily going to wear if he's trying to not be noticed. But also, I mean, it's a t-shirt. He's got a t-shirt and he's got a satchel. He wears it. It's similar to my go bag. And what kind of stuff is in my go bag? Well, this is usually in it, but I got to hold a patch and that tried to fall through. But this is my go bag right here. It used to have a gas mask in it. The gas mask is on the wall. I didn't throw it away or anything, but I got one of these in there instead. No, this is not a Speedo. It kind of looks like one, especially on my face. I'm sure there are people out there that could probably make this double as underwear. Now, it was either this one or a pink one. That's all they had left in stock when I went and got it. And it was kind of an emergency thing. I was told that I had to have a mask or I couldn't go where I needed to go. So I had to go somewhere else to buy a $10 mask. And then the place where I needed to go, once I got in there, I realized that they had paper masks right next to the door. Congratulations, Sean. Way to use your eyeballs. Although That's kind of hindsight, and it's also the fact that I had been greeted before I even made it inside to see the paper room, so that makes sense too. But it's got important stuff for sensory overload. I mean, if you look at what I have in here, I have weird stuff that you guys wouldn't imagine. I wish I had Legos. I totally wish I had Legos. But you know what I have instead? I have rubber bands, and I have tongue depressors or coffee stirrers. I have, stuff that I can play with and fidget with. I have a mechanical mind as well. So a lot of times I'll think of something in my head, and I'll want to test a tension idea that I have involving springs or involving a torsion rod or something like that, and I can feel with the rubber bands where the tension is going to be, and I just pretend my fingers are where the pivots are going to be. Or I'll find something like sometimes I'll tie it up to my shoelace if it's something that's extra complicated. So then I got all my fingers involved. I got my shoelaces involved in holding a portion of it, and then I'm also trying to twist it to get the right torsion for where I'd want it to be. And that's where it comes in handy to learn about military technologies. I mean, a lot of this stuff isn't designed for killing people; it's designed for saving lives. Like a tank, it's arguably for killing people, but the very, very, very first ones didn't have any sort of cannon on them. They were just they were so that you could get them in there. It was basically like, all right, we need 10 Marines to come up behind that big chunk of metal, and when we get to the trenches, pop out behind it. But then we started learning about a lot of this really heavyweight stuff that we're able to use in heavy construction materials and heavy weight cranes and things to this day. I'm looking at a lot of this stuff that people are having this idea from the way that Hollyweird portrays everything. I mean, really, you're getting your point of view from a bunch of people who, many of them, are admitted pedophiles now. Obviously, their heads aren't quite working the way that you and I might imagine. If you have the money to buy incredibly stupid stuff like children, and you can't give in, or you can give in to that temptation because you have the money to do that, like, why would anybody have that temptation to begin with? Who is it that becomes famous? You're in high school and you're taking drama class, and then you're a waitress or a waiter, and then next thing you know, you're in a big Hollywood production and people love you, and now you got a bunch of elitists talking about a bunch of creepy stuff. The first thing I'd have done is try to call somebody, hey, dude. And then I just started recording them. People hate that. Something that he doesn't include in his go bag that I do include in mine is a recording device. And that's in either one of them, because you never know. If it's a case where it is martial law that's declared, you don't know necessarily that everything's going to fold. There's a possibility that things might come together. There might be a peaceful resolution. People might realize that, both sides need to stop fighting, and we need to do less talking. We need to agree on what to do and then implement it. And that's where we are having problems, and we are having failure after failure, decade after decade in the laws that we're passing. We're not making any way to enforce it. We're saying, hey, we're going to do this. Well, how? When? How are you planning on achieving this goal? Instead of giving me a generalization, give me a time and date. Instead of saying we're gonna for another 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 20, 50 years. How about we say, on December 20th, we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss it. It's not a year from now, which means that those who are suffering aren't having to continue to suffer while you discuss it in a committee. When you have millions of people that are depending on you to not be an idiot, and your laws are killing them, yeah, they're not going to be happy. And this guy right here, he's not blaming it on the protesters. He's not blaming the rioters or the government. He's just telling you about different products that are out there while you can still get them. While you can still order them over the internet. You can still order a suture kit over the internet. You still have power and electricity. Right now you could learn how to give somebody stitches. There are YouTube videos and all sorts of other places that have videos, as well as many medical encyclopedias that are free online. So you can learn how to do that right now. Matter of fact, that might be more useful for you right now than listening to me. But I do recommend looking up Urban Get Home Bag. What this guy is talking about and what's in his go bag, I'm sure there are things that are in there now that wouldn't have been there before. One of the things that I keep in my go bag is a rain poncho, and I also keep tape. That's something I always carried in case of rain, in case I have sensitive electronics that I don't want getting wet. But also when you're talking about, like, here's my go bag. That's my poncho. It's just a cheap little thing at Walmart. It don't cost nothing at all. There's my tape. I don't have a map in here, but I do know the general area. Now, I never know what kind of a situation it's going to be. Somebody sent me a $50 Visa gift card a while back, and I keep that in here for emergencies. Um, I know some people are going to tell me I'm an idiot for saying that, and somebody's going to mug me for it. No, people hate me a lot for other stuff. If they're going to hurt me, that's not going to be what they're going to hurt me over. They're going to hurt me over rumors they heard. Then we got this right here is a little bit wider. If need be, I can seal up most of the openings on a lot of the stuff that I have so that I don't have to worry about biological contaminants. I would have to be here in order to have access to my gas masks, but, well, at least I know where they're at. And if it looks like something like that is inevitable, I should have time to come back here, grab my go bag. If you put a firearm in it, you're asking for trouble because you never know whether or not there's going to be a particular type of issue. But you got to look at the fact that it's going to be a while before something screwed up happens. If you're expecting something screwed up to happen every day, and you're being paranoid every day, and you're thinking of everything to be solved as, with firearms like it's the Old West, like, no. I've been in a lot of screwed up situations where survival became important, and the things that you're worrying about are food, water, and shelter. Most of the time, the first thing you're worried about is shelter. Like, you might be hungry, but you're cold too. You're really cold. And getting out of the cold is definitely overriding the I'm hungry thing. So I got a flashlight here. I have a whistle. It has a compass. It also has a magnifying glass so that I can start fires. It's got a thermometer on the back so that I can tell what the temperature is. It's also got the magnesium fire starter. and I wrapped it on here and put a whole bunch of string around it so that it's good and solid on there. This is the striker for it. What you do is you use this part right here to scratch off the magnesium. And then basically, if you got the Boy Scout handbook, you probably already know what this is for. But it's basically a magnesium match. It's just the old fashioned version of it. I've also got a bunch of black wire on here. And what I've noticed is that duct tape is pretty much useful a lot more than wire is. But when you need wire, you really need it. When you're in an emergency situation where you're driving your vehicle and you have, a link come off of it and it's one of them little compression ball things. Really, the only thing you can do at that point, once that's worn out and you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, sure, you can wait for AAA to get there if you have AAA. But if you're somebody like me, you just got to be glad to have something like this. Pull it out, twist it around. It's small enough and weak enough that that piece can keep on moving. And it's also got plastic around it, which is going to increase its durability and decrease its chance of degrading quickly. Now I only need it for, a few miles till I get to wherever it is that I can replace that piece. But it'll last longer if I need it to. And if I need to replace it, I have enough to do it. I have a little bit of newspaper in case of needing to start a fire, needing some sort of easy to catch kindling. But this is not an urban go bag like this guy's talking about. This is for out here in the middle of the boonies. When the snow's out and everything is pretty bright, these kind of can come in handy. It says Party Glow, but they were cheap, and these are so that if there's an emergency, let's say I break my leg while I'm out hiking, I can break one of these or both of them if need be and try to signal somebody. And I could have sworn I had 3 of those in here. And I got a little pad for drawing on, and for jotting stuff down. When there's stuff that people recommend to me that I hadn't done yet, or when somebody is teaching me how to do something, a lot of times I'll try to write it down and take notes. Um, I mean, it's basically just stuff that if I had to leave right now, whether it was a zombie apocalypse or aliens, like a lot of y'all are afraid of, ain't no zombies, and aliens don't give a crap about us. But if it's an asteroid or a nuclear strike or a conventional strike or anything like that, this stuff right here is all stuff that has a potential use that could save lives, every bit of it. I also got marking devices. I got scissors and I have a mechanical pencil. Um, but I don't have a medical kit in here. This guy, he's going to go through a lot of his medical stuff, and I did go through and look at a lot of the things that he's got. I will be ordering a little bit of that at a time, and let's say I'm wrong, no harm done. There's a field med kit that's a full, what do they call it, a tactical surgeon's kit. It's basically a surgical room and a bag. Fits on your backpack or fits on your back. If you're a family unit, something like that, that might be something where you might want to divvy up a bag for each of you. Um, you want to have stuff in it, like fishing line and things of that nature if you're going to be having a go bag. But these guys are talking about having an urban get home bag. That's where you're going home to get your go bag. And in that case, you might as well just forego all of that extra crap as far as having a go bag and a get home bag, and might as well make it a multi-purpose bag like I got. I did get a bunch of medical supplies. I got some peroxide. I got some rubbing alcohol. I got, oh my God. Uh, I didn't get anything for sutures. Um, uh, but I got a bunch of rolled gauze. I got some non-stick pads. I got some antibiotic ointment. Much like this dude's stuff, there's no guns in my bag. This is all medical stuff. This is waxed dental floss. I need unwaxed dental floss. But waxed dental floss can be used if you guys uh, watch a 5-minute tutorial on how to make rope, or you get the Boy Scout handbook and read the thing. Um, you'll know how to make a really high tensile strength bowstring. You'll be able to get yourself, you won't be hunting like, you know, brown bear or anything like that, but you'll be able to get like a squirrel or a rabbit or a bird or something like that for dinner. Um, alcohol prep pads, uh, butterfly closures. I got a few packs of these. There's 12 closures for each one of these containers, and I think I got 2 or 3 of them. And a lot of people, you know, might say, well, you should have spent it on something else. It would have been better served in this, and it would have been better served in that. And, you know, I would really like to hope for the best, but I still got to prepare for the worst. I do realize what kind of a world we live in. So basically, it's a bunch of different gauze and, you know, stuff for emergencies. If everybody in your family carries their own individual rations and a little bit of the person who's carrying the medical stuff's rations, then you can basically bring it down so that you're all doing a pretty good job and you're all able to maintain well. In that situation, what we're talking about is safety in numbers. When I say to sin, I'm not talking about going and killing and having sex with your neighbor's wife and creepy stuff like that. I'm talking about safety in numbers. People are less likely to choose a group of people to victimize than a single person. The few occasions where that's different is when they have somebody they feel they can trust to watch their back. Like a lot of robbers, they're not going to go into the bank. They don't have the testicular fortitude for that. Plus, they know it's a dumb idea. But then when they want to show off for their friend wants to show off for them, well, then all of a sudden, this thing that they both know is an incredibly stupid idea has turned into something that both of these guys know is stupid, but they're going to do anyway. And just don't. Let's see. Starmasia typed, I don't know nothing about boats, but I'm intrigued now. Starmasia typed, notice how sicknesses tend to come from places where people are living like a giant crowd, like cities and such. My husband has a pink one too. Deathbread typed, Civil War will be more civil than people think. I would like to imagine. Yeah, we keep thinking that throughout history. We thought that with Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar in some places is hailed as a conquering hero. In other places, he is talked about like the bastard that he was. All he cared about was glory, his own. And we've had pretty much nonstop that crap ever since. And I would like to pretend that it is just Europe and that it is just white Europeans that are the reason for all of this. When we look back through history, we see the histories written by many of these other peoples. The same things were going on in regimes thousands of years ago. Um, Even here in town, with me trying to mind my own business and stay away from people, I get to walk by and hear people in passing talking about their guns, their guns, their guns. Like that's what they're going for right now. That is their go-to as a solution at this point. That's the farmers that live outside of town that come into town and to get their mail or to have their morning coffee and sit there for an hour or two. That's people who have lived here for friggin' ever. That's people who just moved here and they're wanting to know if there's a place where they can get ammunition. Like this whole place went completely nuts. We also had hunting season, and a lot of hunters were like, "Dude, I got a 224 Valkyrie, and I can't find nothing to put in it. I got to hunt with my grandpa's this or my uncle's this, and it's got a broken this, and it's got a messed up that." You seeing how clumsy something like that is, though? How much extra added weight that is. I mean, 8 or 9 pounds may not seem like much, but you also got to consider the stuff that is keeping you alive on a daily basis. A soldier may spend his entire service as a soldier never firing a rifle, ever. Well, never firing a rifle in wartime. You're carrying that thing around that for a civilian, there's not much purpose in something that clunky. And besides that, that will make you a target. Just the fact that you have it, people look at that and go, well, he probably isn't up to anything good. He's got one of those. It's not registering in their head that they have one for the exact same purpose that you have one. At this point, they're paranoid and it's every man for himself or every woman for themselves or, whatever. And still, we got even the gun nuts. Most of them aren't putting guns in their go bags. They're not putting guns in their urban get home bag. They're putting stuff in there that will help them to not get themselves a whole bunch of attention. You go walking through a city during a crisis with an M16, an AR-15, an AK-47, an M1 Grand, anything of that nature, people are automatically assuming that you're going to do some of that crap that boy from Indiana pulled. Or those folks who didn't like, actually, I guess there's 4 different people now that have been brought to my attention that were shot for saying all lives matter. But I mean, this is a lot to contemplate. It's a lot to put on people's plate. And then everybody wants to take stuff personal. When you're angry, that is the wrong time to be doing that. That is the wrong time to be going for a firearm or a weapon or anything of that nature. When you're angry, ain't the right time to do that. Also, when you're in the middle of a crisis, that is not the time to prepare for it. Chance favors the prepared mind. It's better to have it and never use it than to need it and not have it. And that is where the military rifle comes in. For the military, for you guys, I don't remember or I don't recommend getting into a military engagement. I don't recommend exchanging fire. I mean, it's too easy to catch people in the crossfire, especially when you're in an urban situation. I mean, that's one of the first things that they teach you when you're taking an urban shooting class. That's not the same as hunter safety out here. Out here, they're teaching you how not to be a dumbass with the gun, but it's mostly in a hunting setting. There, they're teaching you how to, hey, if you're going out there and spraying and praying, keep in mind you're in the middle of a city. It's pretty friggin' crowded. And just because you don't see a human being on the other side of the wall doesn't mean there's not a human being on the other side of the wall. You shouldn't have to have x ray vision to think about other human beings in your surrounding area. When you're in that particular situation, you have become the problem and not the solution. Now, the people that you have shot up because you were an idiot need somebody like this guy who, instead of filling his backpack with some really cool, fancy, state of the art, oh my God, look at this friggin' transformer thing that I got that I can show off everybody on my YouTube channel. No, this guy is going to show up and he's going to bandage you up for the idiot who has the YouTube channel about the whole goddamn thing in his backpack. Is like, yeah, dude, why would you do that? That's like putting a rocket propelled grenade launcher in your backpack, you know, or a landmine. Like, why? Why? And then we got to talk about assumed populations. There are certain populations that their guilt is automatically assumed. We see this with minorities. We see this with the disabled. We see this with autistic people who are stimming, or people with Tourette syndrome who are having a nervous tick. You're scaring them. They have a nervous tick. They're not on drugs. You don't have to slam them to the ground. No need for that. When you assume the worst, you might be having an issue with a meth head. You might also be dealing with somebody who's got a disability that you just don't understand. People say, Sean, that's not my fault. That's not my fault. And I got to say to you guys, it's not my fault either. I'm trying to educate you. All right. Star Magia type. My uncle's name is Julio Cesar. He's nothing like Julius Caesar, though. Everyone wants guns today and don't know the first thing about how to use it or even store it. Deaf Brad type. I think you would at least want a shotgun if you are in the desolate Alaskan wilderness. Nope, that is not what I'd want in the desolate Alaskan wilderness. If I was in the desolate Alaskan wilderness, I would want a small ballista. A ballista fires rocks basically, but you don't have to put rocks there. You could also just take a little piece of cloth or something similar and fill it with rocks. You can hunt birds just as easily with that. Also, it's not going to kill somebody if you are uncareful or stupid. It's just going to hurt like a son bitch. There are situations where, yes, a gun is important. There are also a lot of situations where if you got to choose between grabbing a gun and shooting at people or grabbing the emergency kit and getting your family out of there, you might want to leave your rifle at home. Just a suggestion. Also, if you have one that does look specifically like a hunting rifle, and you look like you're the head of a household, and this is where social contracting comes in. If you're walking as a family and you have the man standing in front, because this is supposed to be the one who is the protector of the family, he needs to be out in front, and then the little children in the middle, and then the mother in the back. Now, a lot of the reason for that is because the father, in that particular situation, his social contract is to keep on the alert and pay attention to what's ahead of him. and to listen to what's going on behind him. The mother's job is to make sure the kids are okay and also to keep up communication because it's difficult for the person who is in the front to stroll forward. Now, we've also got situations where we literally don't have to have that social contract. It could be the woman in the front. It could be the eldest kid in the front. You can take turns, it doesn't matter. But the idea behind having a hunting rifle in that situation is specifically for hunting. I mean, you're not trying to harm anybody. It's not like you guys are all out there, every one of you, with matching M16s and military clothing and patches, and like those guys who were doing the reenactments of Vietnam or the reenactments of the Civil War. That's not what you're going to go out in. I'm sure of it. Some of those folks, they might have some of the stuff there that might be something that they grab and put in their go bag, or have an idea that they might want to put it there. You can take like the mess kit, for example. Say you do the Civil War reenacting and you have a mess kit. It's a reproduction mess kit. It's fully serviceable and it's an exact replica. So I mean, you can literally use it. You can put that in your go bag. I mean, how many times a year do you go do the Civil War reenacting thing? Once, twice, maybe. So I mean, it's not like you don't know where it is when you want to go do your reenacting thing. And if there's an emergency, you already have it prepared next to the door. That's why it's called a go bag. If you're in the middle of a city, you're going to want to put different stuff in it than you're going to want to put in if you're here. Also, this area is pretty well flat. So you're also going to want to consider that versus if you were to be in, say, the Rocky Mountains. Also, we have a lot more moisture here than they have in, say, New Mexico or somewhere like that. So it's important that if you're going to be in an area for an extended period of time, it's a good thing to possibly learn something about the terrain that you're in. There are so many people that can tell you all sorts of stuff about the city, but they can't tell you nothing about the surrounding area, and that's what they're going to have to forage off of. A lot of people in the United States have already started to forage. And one thing that I'm not seeing people take out when they're going out foraging, for the most part, they're not taking rifles, they're not taking guns. You see the big hysteria over toilet paper, right? For a lot of us, we're solo. That safety number thing doesn't exist. With a lot of the people that I was trying to work with, the frustrations were absolutely immense. And then there's the fact that I'm understanding their frustrations. I'm understanding the reasons that they can't do the things that they said that they were going to do. What I'm not understanding is why they couldn't speak up. Why couldn't you just speak up or write it down like you said you were going to? And of course, that doesn't go for most of you. Most of you weren't involved with any of that. Um, but there's a lot of that stuff on there. Instead of, like I said, instead of listening to what Hollyweird tells you, instead of believing what a bunch of friggin' pedophiles and writers for pedophiles tell you, why don't you get an education? I've heard lots of wives' tales about stuff that you can do to save yourself if you're in the wilderness. And you're like, well, hold on a second. Which wilderness are we talking about? Because that thing that you're talking about, we don't have those in Nebraska. If we don't have those in Nebraska, how is that particular technique going to work here? Also, you got to know something about what you're eating. there's only one type of potato that is native to North America, and it's a type of nightshade. Nightshade is a poison. So if you're eating natural potatoes, you're going to kill yourself. So don't do it. A lot of people think, what's the worst that could happen? Like, let's say you're hungry and you think, well, I'm just going to pick up them mushrooms. Well, you go, well, there's probably like a 10% chance that it might be one that'll make me go, ooh, hallucinate or whatever. No, there's a higher chance you'll get a hold of one that'll kill you. So don't do it. That's again one of those things where you should probably learn in specific what's in your area rather than listen to, well, there's a reason that Mythbusters was on for more than a year. There's a reason they had more than one season. Starmagia typed old leaves are the new TV. They could be, I suppose. Oh, all right. So I washed myself and I did it with body wash. I got my hair and I got my beard and I combed it out. I even got some combs to make sure I look pretty. The problem is now I am super extra itchy. All right, I didn't get the comb because I look pretty. I did it because I run my fingers through it, and they always get stuck. But at least they're getting stuck at the very end now, and not every single time. You know, but you gotta use a comb to do that. And you see how I started up at the very top, and then I worked myself all the way down to the bottom. That catches tangles and it yanks them out. That's the wrong way to do it. What you want to do is you want to start at the bottom, work yourself up about half an inch, and you can get those tangles out. When you catch them, you just want to go down below them a little bit and kind of feather your way back up. You can get it out without even yanking out a knot, and then everything is fine and dandy. But then, of course, I got this fluffy beard. And you see, I started all the way in the middle, and I yanked out a bunch of hairs. That's where experience comes in. That's where many people who have a trade, where their trade comes in. They have experience. You should listen to their experience. If somebody is a plumber and they've been a plumber for 20 years, they might be a complete and total fucking idiot, but they're still a plumber after 20 years, which means they know their shit when it comes to plumbing. Point of fact. So if you're in a situation where you need a plumber, you should probably listen to the plumber. If a plumber tells you that something is a bad idea, you should probably listen to him. It's probably a bad idea. A lot of people around here like to work on their own pipes. They'll buy a house that's almost 100 years old or over 100 years old. And these pipes that are in there, they're almost rusted completely all the way through. But the water's been flowing through the inside of the pipes and not the outsides. So the outsides of these pipes kind of sort of look okay. And people think that they're going to wrench on it just a little bit harder than they should because they want to get the water completely turned off or completely turned on before they change out to a brand new electric water heater. And they bust it off. It turns out that it's just a bunch of rusted shale, and you're flooding out your basement and making yourself a pretty big mess because you knew better than a plumber or because you didn't bother to ask a plumber. Rather than argue with somebody who is in the situation, perhaps you should probably listen to the person who is in the situation. Instead of giving somebody advice on how to survive in their situation, why don't you find out what it is that they need? If you live out in the desert and you keep trying to push it on somebody who, lives on the Great Lakes, you're like, all right, well, first thing you need to do, dude, is get some water. Dude, I'm on a boat on a freshwater lake. I don't need to find water. I got a water purifier on the boat. We're good to go. It's fresh water I'm sitting on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, you really need to think about like for the future, man. You need to get like you need to have like a cistern or something, you know? Like I'm telling you, it is really important for you to have access to water. And they're in Arizona. That's what they're thinking about. That's what their experience is. That's what they have to deal with there. And it's difficult to get someone out of the fact that, hey, that's not the scenario that I'm in. In a scenario where you're going to need to grab a bag and leave quickly, we're not talking about a situation in most cases where you're going to need a firearm. We're talking about a situation in most cases where you're trying to escape with your life. If your house is on fire, you're trying to get out of there with your life. If people are dropping mortars around your house, you're trying to get out of there with your life. If you've got aliens coming down from their spaceships or demons coming up because the rapture's already over or whatever else that it happens to be, it's always the same. You need to save your life, and this is the stuff that you need right fucking now. It's already prepared. Your house isn't going to stop burning long enough for you to go through all of your documents. It's not going to stop burning long enough for you to go find whatever it is that you need in order to make sure that if you're stuck in a field for a couple of days hiding, or you might be on a long walk for a while because there's washouts, you're able to do that. If people are assaulting your house, people aren't going to go, oh, hold on. We need to give them a timeout. We need to TV timeout, TV timeout. That don't happen in real life. Also, every moment that you're spending doing stupid stuff is a moment that whatever that danger is encroaching upon you. If you're going to stay in that house and run around the whole damn thing for half an hour, you're going to die. You're going to burn to death. If you're going to stay in that house and tell yourself that that house over your cold dead hands and so on and so forth, and you're going to shoot at a bunch of people instead of getting your family the fuck out of there, well, now you've just made yourself, your house, and your family a target. They're not going to stop and go, all right, thank goodness we have x-ray vision and we can see through the walls. Remember I was talking about that earlier? Yeah, it goes both ways. That's where I'm different than most folks. I can see both sides, and often there's more than two sides. There's usually at least three. Like in the case of a divorce, there's his, there's hers, and there's the truth. When you dole out punishment based on just one side, well, you've created a scenario where there's probably going to be some hysteria. And then we've got all of these unforeseen things that keep on happening. Did these unforeseen things stop after Y2K? Nope. How about after 9/11? Nope. They sure as hell didn't. Whole bunch of bombings later, a whole bunch of illnesses later, Ebola coming back, bird flu coming back. We got the COVID now. People are like, well, we don't have to worry about that stuff any. And every time you start spouting that stuff, I'm like, we need to worry about this stuff. No, words, we don't need to worry about that. We got doctors and we got lawyers and they take care of this stuff. Then you look at this. We get a whole bunch of diseases and we get a whole bunch of people that are killed by the police over stupid shit. Most of them disabled or homeless. Um, let's see. Starmasia type. If you can get your hand on castor oil, it'll work wonders for the beard. Nope, that's just extras. This is lightweight. It's not messy. It's not going to attract any dirt or debris. It'll help me to get rid of it. Oils attract dirt and debris. There's a lot of stuff that you might think oil would be the best lubricant, but if it's next to the ground, you might want to use a carbon-based lubricant like graphite. Um, it tends to work better when it gets wet. It doesn't do the same thing as oil does, but there's also that it's not attracting dirt. And when you've got wheels, like let's say you're using a skateboard, you're not kicking up a lot of stuff, a lot of dust that's going to get stuck to the oil if you're in the air. But if you're on a skateboard and it's touching the ground, yeah, there's dirt on the ground. It's going to happen. If it's if it's got oil in it, that's going to stick to it. If it's got graphite, that stuff is a lot less likely to stick. Same thing with my beard. I'm in western Nebraska. There's a lot of dirt roads around here, even here in town. Matter of fact, this road here is dirt. That road right there is dirt. There's no interconnecting road here until you get over to the connecting road with First Street, and that part just recently, I believe, in the last 10 or 15 years, became paved. So I think when I first moved to Chapel, First Street was a dirt road. I could be wrong about that. And we got this pride thing. We're told that we're supposed to have pride and this, that, and the other, and then we want to live this and emulate it, and we have all these magic fairy tale things that really in the world amount to jack shit and bupkis. They throw them notions out the window. Find food, find water, find shelter, and not necessarily in that order. A lot of y'all have good ideas about how to fight back, when to fight back, and who to fight back. But we have a whole bunch of options for fighting back without violence. And the American people, instead of working together and taking those options, we continue to complain at the government, complain that we're broke, and then throw our lives into the bottom of a bottle. And then complain some more that our lives suck because of other people and we're broke because of other people. And somebody should do something. Someone should do something. Someone do something. I'm doing something. Starmasia typed, I forgot about dirt. Yeah. Nebraska gets windy too. Actually, you can probably see this thing flapping every so often. It's not all that windy here in Nebraska. It's only about maybe 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour most of the time. Once in a while, though, we get some good windstorms, like 80 miles an hour. That's intense. We had a snowstorm here in Chapel, Nebraska that was way scarier than Hurricane Matthew. But also, like, I survived Hurricane Matthew in a Honda Civic. So I kind of sort of had shelter from Hurricane Matthew. Here, there's been a lot of times where even when you're in the house is so old and so rickety that, like, yeah, every breeze just blows right through. Anyway, a lot of the stuff that I talk about on these videos, I don't have the editing abilities to show you this stuff, or I try to show you the best way I can just to make you aware of it. Um, a lot of this it's kind of like having a file in your dresser that's for your medical stuff, or having your safe that you keep um, your last will and testament in. It's kind of the same thing. This is not safekeeping for that, though. This is your safekeeping for your needs. And if you have family, your family's needs. A lot of people aren't going to make the connection that you're doing the same thing that they're doing. They're going to be suspicious of you from the start. You're going to be suspicious of them from the start. You might not make very good decisions. You might have had a bad fucking day or a bad fucking month, and they've had a bad month, especially with all of this COVID stuff going on, and you're all stuck with your husbands, your wives, and your fucking kids. God bless their souls, right? Bless their hearts. Yeah, but you've been locked up for what, 7, 8, 9 months in some places? Yeah. Anyway, what I'm trying to get across to you though is that focus on whatever you feel is important for your life. If you want to look away and not be prepared and pretend it could never happen to you, I mean, there's so many people through all of this who kept on saying, "Oh, that'll never happen to me. That'll never happen to me, Sean. It doesn't really happen like that." And then later on, sure enough, that's exactly what they're dealing with. I'm sure Derek Parrish didn't think that his mom was going to have a heart attack. That's not true. That's not. We knew that Janine had a heart problem beforehand. We knew that she had severe palpitations, that sometimes she would nearly pass out from it. So I guess we did see it coming. If I die of a heart attack, I want to tell you something. I'm Hebrew, not Jewish. Hebrew is the bloodline. Jewish is the religion. Well, Judaism is the religion. I have eaten a lot of bacon in my lifetime. I ate some donuts before I started this video. I chug eggnog. I am addicted to sugar. And I do mean addicted. Nearly everywhere I went, you can ask people. Yes, straight up addicted to sugar. Now, that one right there, what's that sugar addiction from? If you look at any of those kids that grew up on medications, Ritalin, sorry about the train, kids who took Ritalin, we tend to be addicted to sugar later on in life. A lot of those medications that they give us with it, like especially during the 80s when they were feeding that crap to me, they didn't know the possible reactions and interactions with other medications. They knew the possibilities and they did it anyway. Later on in life, when this has long lasting repercussions for their patients, we need to stop addressing them as patients and we need to start addressing them as victims. My vulnerabilities were used to exploit me, to try to make me look like I was a terrible person instead of listen to me about the abuse that I was enduring and look at the abusers that I was trying to turn in. Look at Waylon Lolatai. Had a history of doing that and did it to 6 more people after he did it to me. Look at those officers with Demetrius Shankling. And then that officer that Clinton Helpstetter, or sorry, George was talking about in that video. Well, there was a woman who was raped named Teresa Massilia in Boulder. And that particular jackhole, same dude. There was two situations that happened within about a year of each other. One of them is a situation involving Christine Kelly. Christine Kelly was going to college in Boulder. She wanted to become a doctor. Um, Not sure how much you guys know about how much that entails, but that's what she was going to school for. And a lot of doctors, they start off thinking that they're going to be saving lives. And in many cases, they truly do. But what ended up happening is that she got raped. And she didn't fight back hard enough, is what the police said. When she tried to turn in her rapist, they told her that she couldn't have been raped because she didn't fight back hard enough. And then they charged her with filing a false police report. They still cover up rape in Boulder, especially after that stuff in the 90s and right after 2000 happened with those rapes and how nationally televised. In addition to the bad mojo from everything with JonBenet Ramsey. All of this stuff is interconnected. It all is stuff that they think about. It is all stuff that is still thrown in their face to this day. There's officers that a lot of people think that I'm their goddamn therapist, even idiots with badges. And they'd come up and say, I've only been a police officer here for such and such amount of years, and JonBenet was killed 20 years ago. Why are people blaming me for that? Well, you're working for that department, and that department continues to fuck up like that. Now, let's take the case of Teresa Massilia. Teresa Massilia was also raped in Boulder. She also went to the police to file a report. Now, you see, is where Christine Kelly was charged with making a false police report because she didn't fight back hard enough. Teresa Massilia, her assailant was never charged either. She did fight back. She was charged with assault for fighting off her assailant, for fighting off her raper or rapist. Women have more of a chance than men do in those scenarios, and even they in Boulder, Colorado, have zero rights. They are not heard. When Christine Kelly posted up a GoFundMe to try to get funding so that she could defend herself in court against this, you know what ended up happening? She had to leave the state. Teresa Massilia had to leave the state. I had to leave the state. Teresa Massilia, she's real pretty, but she also looks like a hippie. Not a hippie from the 1970s, but a traveler. When people see her, they probably associate her with the homeless, or they associate her with Naropa University and September School, which are also oddly, strangely looked at the same as the homeless. A lot of the kids at the September School, this is your troubled youth. Many of them get out of school at the September School, which they are sentenced to, and they go and they hang out with their buddies down at the park. Except it's not a little kids' park with a playground and all of this. It's where people go to buy and sell and trade illicit just about everything. When you're in a scenario where there is heated crap going on all over the place and people are murdering each other over words, yeah, that's when it's important to, like he was talking about, go gray. Try not to get noticed. Try not doing stupid stuff like, well, trying to go John Wayne in the middle of the city. And yeah, in that scenario, everybody's afraid. It's important to try to decrease their fear. If you have a concealed carry permit and hell goes to hell, you've got your concealed carry permit. You already have it on you. Let's just hope that you're level headed enough not to be doing something stupid. We see in a lot of these cases where the local society does one of two things. Either one, they fall under the control of a warlord. Sometimes it's a local politician. Sometimes it's just a shop worker who is real popular in his shop. You got a bunch of people to listen, and then a bunch of people listen to them like their families, and now you've got a whole bunch of people listening to somebody based on popularity who's got some real radical ideas. Um, Starmagia type oils are the only things that help my skin. When I was in the institutions, we used to get cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is super useful. Starmagia also typed, what did they give you Ritalin for? ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. See, here's how it went for me. I went to Centennial Peaks. Within 3 days there, I was on medications morning, noon, and night. They gave me my first medications my very first day there. They haven't observed me for long enough to tell if I even need medications for anything. But they're putting them in me anyway. And they're putting a lot of them in me. That was 1986. And they kept me on those medications, not those ones in specific. They kept on changing it up, changing it up. Most of the medications that they had me on were so dangerous that I had to take a liver function test every 2 weeks. But you look at what they were drugging me for. Let's see, Tourette syndrome. Is that my fault? Nope. Is it my choice? Nope. Does it hurt anyone? Nope. So why are you giving me drugs that harm me? It's a lot easier just to explain to the kids in class what Tourette syndrome is. I know I've had to have that conversation every time I move to a different school. And then we got a lot of schools that are overstepping their boundaries, just like these police overstepped their boundaries. They tried to make medical calls in order to justify the things that they had done. And then the hospitals tried to make calls that the police should have made. If they can't look at the evidence, they can't make a diagnosis of whether I'm telling the truth or not. If I'm telling you that cops are doing bad shit and my friend is dead, you might want to look into whether or not my friend is dead and whether or not the cops are doing bad shit, including the officers who brought me in. If I'm trying to turn in officers, I shouldn't have to go to the officers that I am trying to turn in. That is so screwed up. Meanwhile, I've also got documentation and many witnesses, many of them right here on this very YouTube channel, that verify that yes, police are doing this nationwide, especially in Boulder, though. Colorado is friggin' terrible with it. You go to the East Coast and you see a whole bunch of officers going after mostly minorities and homeless people. You go to the Midwest, they're not so much going after minorities. We're trying to paint it that way. But really, you look at these situations that are happening here, like the situation with Demetrius Shankling, the situation with Tiber Tay. We're talking about situations where there was asshole cops who felt that they were empowered enough that they didn't have to follow the law. And we've got situations where people are having to play on the racist thing. We done been divided. This ain't them dividing us and conquering us. We been divided. We been conquered. We done lost. If we're going to take this back, if we're going to be able to defend ourselves, we need to start thinking defensively. That means thinking about stocking up on essentials like salt, iodine, suture kits, peroxide, things you're going to need. Also, until I broke it, I actually had a thing of pepper and a thing of salt in my go bag, just in case. There are some things I don't carry. I don't carry a knife. That's because I've had too many people who I knew that carried a utility knife, but they were homeless. And when they got arrested for being homeless, they were charged with having a weapon. I was charged with having a weapon when I was assaulted by Waylon Lolatai. And if you look at those videos that are on this YouTube, where is my weapon? Where is the weapon I supposedly had? They said I tried to bite them. I have no teeth. I was yelling because they were hurting me severely. But then again, when they don't allow their body cameras in court, but they will allow the parts that don't have any volume on it, they can say whatever that they want about that part. Oh, well, see, his mouth is open. He looks angry. See, he was trying to bite us. No, Waylon Lolotai is on my leg trying to fucking wrench it away from my body. Now, that assault there probably lasted, I want to say, a good 30 minutes. Now, there were parts like when I was in the ambulance where, yeah, nobody was physically assaulting me, but at the same time, I was in excruciating pain. My wrist was stuck sideways the wrong way in the handcuffs. And this is a popular technique. They call it pain compliance. Anywhere else in the world, we call it torture. They hurt you, which activates your fight or flight. You're already in cuffs. You can't run away. They are hurting you to get a response that they can use to try to pretend like you're some sort of a terrible goddamn monster. And without somebody speaking up for me, they can use that. Anyone can use that as an excuse to harm me and get away with it. Chris Kurth should have been investigated years ago. Officer Waylon Lolatai should have been investigated as soon as he did that shit. But how did they get away with it? By leaning real heavily on that mentally ill tag. Most of the stuff that they diagnosed me with is from medications that I was on. So then they'd give me a medication for the diagnosis that they just gave me, a diagnosis based on the repercussions of taking such messed up medication. And then I end up having more messed up symptoms, symptoms that are attributed specifically to these medications. And we know that these medications make you act in such a way and have, in many cases, a large percentage of doing that. And then when people react to it in that way, you give them more medications. Now there's more side effects. So you give them more medications, more diagnosis, more side effects, more medications, more diagnosis, more side effects, more medications. You see where I'm going with this. Um, Starmagia typed, how crazy is it that autistic people have been diagnosed as people with ADHD? Some of us do have ADHD. If I'm totally immersed in something, I don't have ADHD. I have tunnel vision. But when I got something that I need to get done and I need help with it, and people are telling me they'll help me if I jump through 10,000 hoops, and I'm jumping through those 10,000 hoops, yeah, I'm just getting more overwhelmed. It's not helping me at all. I need people who are not called mentally ill to look at evidence. And I need somebody who knows more about computers than me to help me with this stuff. I can play video games, but as far as, you know, fancy word processor crap goes, yeah, no. I mean, I took a class in high school on how to do that. In the early 90s, I was learning how to do HTML, but it's been years. And things are a lot different now. Anyway, I've been on a long fucking ramble. I gotta try to walk a couple of blocks and see if I can possibly move my little dinky John Deere riding lawnmower and my hot pink golf cart, and hopefully the city didn't tow them already. That's something that a lot of people don't consider. Me, with my back being screwed up, there's a lot of stuff that 5 years ago I would have just done it myself. I wouldn't have asked for help because I didn't need help. I could do it myself. Now I'm like, I can't get things going, can't get them running. People have offered to help, and I've paid people to help. They haven't shown up to help. They haven't answered the doors. Just you know, and then it's my fault for not trying, right? Isn't that everybody's excuse? When they don't keep their word, it's my fault as well. Anyway, it says it's possible to have both. I was told I could only have one of the two, but not both. That's funny. That really is funny. That'd be like saying you can't have Tourette syndrome and ADHD, or like saying that you can't have Tourette syndrome and autism. They're actually all very closely tied together. People on the autistic spectrum are a lot more likely to be, or a lot more likely to have Tourette syndrome than people who are not. A lot of that also is, well, it's a reaction to overwhelming abuse. I want you guys to look something up. I want you to look up the term shell shock, find out where it came from, and then look at the symptoms. There's a lot of stuff on here, right here on YouTube. Not so much on my channel. There's some, but there's all sorts of stuff on YouTube in general from all sorts of authors. Yeah, that's something that's important historically for y'all to learn. It's nice to think that the world is done with tyrants, but when people can't agree on the color of crap and they're too busy saying, well, I'm more victimized than you can't be a victim as a result, we need to get off the fucking piston contest and get something finished. Star Magia type, take care, Sean, will do. All right. Good night, y'all.